Hey guys, Manny here. Just a quick announcement before today's episode. No Such Thing is going to be publishing on Wednesdays now. Stick around after the episode during the credits sequence where you will hear why. We've got a fun announcement, but that's it for now. Enjoy today's episode. I'm Manny.
I'm Noah.
This is Devin.
And this is No Such Thing, the show where we settle our dumb arguments and yours by actually doing the research. On today's episode, is it just me or are we sick of franchise movies?
There's no such thing. No such thing. No such thing. No such thing. No such thing.
All right, boys. There are a lot of franchise films in theaters right now. You've got the new Superman movie. You've got the new Jurassic Park movie. You've got How to Train Your Dragon. You've got the sequel to Megan, M3gan. I'm looking at the now playing page on amctheaters.com, and I would say that at least half of the movies on this page are franchise movies. But I'm going to start this episode by just kind of like explaining my relationship to franchises, but more specifically like comic book franchises. When I was a kid, I read a good amount of comic books. I was into pretty much all of the Marvel characters that are now really popular. And even though comics were technically popular, right, there was an entire market and industry for that kind of stuff, I still wouldn't necessarily tell people at school that I was reading comics, right? Like they just weren't mainstream or cool. But then film studios started using comic books as source material for their movies. And now there's this giant Marvel cinematic universe that has made it so that Marvel content is just normal. Like even if you actively don't like Marvel movies, you still have seen many of them. They're just kind of inescapable. Now, Marvel movies were never like artistic, Oscar-worthy endeavors, right? Like they were always like big, dumb, summer blockbuster exhibitions. But early on in the MCU, they still felt like they had like structure and decent filmmaking and character development. They felt like good faith attempts to tell stories. Fast forward, I don't know, 10, 15 years, and it just is a lot harder to feel like that about the movies that Marvel's putting out today. And it's hard not to think about the contrast between these kind of cool, interesting stories I was reading as a kid and the, quote unquote slop that we're getting today. A lot of people, myself included, we just have fatigue.
Well, Marvel movies.
I don't know them.
Yeah, I feel like me and Noah are similar in that, like, not really for us.
I like the Tobey Maguire first one.
Oh, yeah.
That, I don't really, I mean, I could never, you could erase that and I'm fine. That's pretty much it.
And those were for the listeners, those are the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films that,
those were fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also 10.
Yeah.
Have you seen it since you were a kid?
No. Maybe clips online.
I will maintain that the second Spider-Man movie from Sam Raimi still
like
holds up.
I never saw Iron Man.
Yeah, I didn't see the Iron Mans. I saw the Avengers, but not the one. I saw the one when he killed everybody. Oh, sorry, spoilers. I don't know.
It's too long.
That would have been Infinity War.
Yeah.
Black Panther I watched on a plane. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say anything about that. that was when people were like, "Wow, this one's a really good movie," and I was like, "Okay, it's relative, I guess."
Yeah,
it's relative.
The thing that differentiated Black Panther from the other Marvel movies for me was like there for the first time I think in a Marvel movie there was like thought put into why a villain would want to, why he would be motivated to do something.
Yeah,
y'all sitting up here comfortable. Must feel good. It's about 2 billion people all over the world that looks like us, but their lives are a lot harder.
But yeah, you're right. It's like you get to the end of the movie, you're still like, this is a Marvel movie. This is not like some step above. It did feel the same caliber as the other Marvel movies, but there was a little bit of a difference here where it was like, okay, yeah, finally there's like an all black film.
Yeah.
And so there's like some representation stuff that people valued a lot, but at the end of the day,
I do respect that, to be clear, but yeah.
it was like, even if it sucks, it's still finally we got one.
Yes. Yeah.
But
superhero movies never really were the thing that, like, for me, mostly because I struggle with the fact that most of them don't feel like movies. They feel like, okay, we need to show some people fighting and we'll put some stuff around that.
Yeah, excuses to do that.
Yeah, which is fine. But then I feel like, we're at the point now where, okay, we're just showing up to watch the people fight. Why do I need to know all this? Like, I don't understand anything that's going on.
Even other franchises, if we want to broaden it, like you can watch most of the Mission Impossibles without having seen the other one. I mean, I think this is actually the problem with the newer ones is they think you need to know all this stuff, which you don't. The last one was trash because they spend the entire time referencing the past things when it doesn't matter because none of this makes sense. Anyway. People are overthinking it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've started to see like a Marvelification of other franchises where like you were saying with Mission Impossible, that started out with the first few movies being these kind of cool international espionage flicks. And now they are a lot more Marvel-fied, where there's recurring characters and recurring villains, and Ethan Hunt is basically a superhero now, and he's no longer trying to get these obscure weapons manufacturers. He's instead literally saving the entire planet from exploding in every film. And I just feel like Marvel has kind of spurred a lot of this change in these kind of big action movies.
John Wick.
Oh, yeah.
Now they're expanding that with I haven't seen Ballerina, a John Wick story or whatever it is.
No.
I'll watch it eventually, but I feel like John Wick's also had a bad downstream effect on other movies where there's now just other franchises built off being the John Wick style.
Right.
Guy comes out of killer retirement. Like, why is there a sequel to the Bob Odenkirk John Wick ripoff movie?
Mr. Nobody?
Yeah, it's like, there's really a nobody too. Like, that movie was fine and like, I enjoyed watching that, but it's like, it's crazy you see any trailer for a movie and it's like, it's just John Wick with this guy instead.
Okay, so we've done a lot of complaining about the quality of movie franchise films lately, but it turns out it's not just the quality of these films that are on the decline, it's also their box office numbers. Hate to keep using Marvel as an example here, but according to outlets Variety and The Wrap, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is just on a numbers decline, most recently with Captain America Brave New World and the Thunderbolts movie just not living up to expectations, which is kind of a trend for this latest phase of the MCU. And a quick stat here from Variety just to drive the point home. Before 2020, so pre-pandemic, 19 out of 22 Marvel Cinematic Universe films made at least $500 million globally, but since then, only 6 out of 13 films have reached that benchmark. Obviously, COVID must have played a role in those first couple of years of the pandemic, but I'm not so sure that can be used as an explanation today. I'll include those articles from Variety and The Wrap in our Substack for this episode. But before we get to our expert, I wanted to ask you two, what is your take on this? Why do you think these movie franchises are on a financial decline?
My take is I think they're getting too complicated. And I think by getting so complicated, you're ruining the whole point of a Marvel movie, which is like you just show up, it's fun for the family, it's a popcorn film, you don't have to think. Everything is just kind of right there in front of you. Yeah. You know, like there's nothing you have to like go talk to your friends about.
You don't need to do homework.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can, like the nerds always did that, and like, oh, did you? But like you could show up knowing nothing and enjoy it. And I feel like now we're at the point where, like, my mom can't just show up and watch a Marvel movie because she's going to be asking me the entire time what's happening.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Don't make me do homework to see Paul Rudd as
not
Ant-Man.
a Marvel movie.
And I also think just generally it's like you had a good run. Yeah. Like things only last so long before you kind of need a break. There's obviously an appetite for that sort of stuff or superheroes and these sorts of things.
Yeah.
But like you can only do so much with one.
You just
just
don't want it to feel cheap when you're watching it. Like, I remember when the Star Wars prequels came out, and I'm a bit of a prequels defender.
I will do what I must. You will try.
Like, did those movies absolutely suck ass? Yes. But the reason I think they are so much more rewatchable than the new Star Wars trilogy is that there was a vision and there was a compelling enough reason to tell that story. Those movies ended up not being good for a bunch of different reasons, but I think they're infinitely better, or at least more rewatchable than the sequels, which got produced explicitly to sell toys and get people to Disneyland. It's just so obvious when content is naturally developed versus content that is totally forced.
I have a pitch for Star Wars. They should make a movie that's just, and tell me if they did this so I can watch it, but a movie where they're just in the cantina from the original movies. And just those guys hanging out doing, gambling and stuff. Get like Jim Jarmusch or Kevin Smith or something to direct. I'd be happy to write it.
All right, it was good to hear why you two think people are becoming fatigued by franchise movies, but after the break, we're going to get some real answers from Walt Hickey. He's an executive editor over at Sherwood News, but more importantly for us, he's the author of You Are What You Watch, How Movies and TV Affect Everything. We'll be back in a bit. All right, we're back. Before the break, we established that people are getting tired of franchise movies. We used Marvel as an example, but that's not the only one. I think people are tired of franchises in general. And so I wanted to talk to Walt Hickey, author of You Are What You Watch, to figure out why. Before we talk about the decline of franchise movies, I wanted to ask Walt about the incline, right? Like I wanted to figure out how they got popular. And to my surprise, it turns out that franchise storytelling is like an ancient practice.
Franchise storytelling is the oldest kind of storytelling that we have. If you want one of the first franchises that you've probably been familiar with, the Odyssey, the Iliad, and the Aeneid, right? You've got the first installment in the Iliad, you've got the sequel in the Odyssey, and then you've got the spin-off that another studio took on later in the Aeneid. You have these stories that we keep coming back to, that we are obsessed with, these heroes, these individuals that we like quite a bit, right? It's not just a American Hollywood thing, it is a global thing, right? Sherlock Holmes is a classic example of a character that kept on getting installments done in their name, like ancient heroes like Hercules. There was this popular fella that they did 4 canonical books about called Jesus that eventually lots of other people took on books about. And so like at the end of the day, you have this just being a fairly integral way that we tell stories. We like recognizable characters. We like recognizable stories. We like recognizable plot lines that articulate things about how the world changes and how we understand them.
So, of course I knew that like the Odyssey and the Iliad were related, and like I don't know why I'd never thought about those as franchises. But like it kind of makes sense. It's like Homer probably wrote the second one because people liked the first one, right? I don't know. Like, I don't know what was going on back then.
Yo, Homer, we need the second one.
When's it dropping? The kind of takeaway here being that, like, of course, we all like when we recognize characters and stories from previous iterations.
That makes sense to me. That like you're familiar, you're comfortable with it. Like it's a good entry point. But this is the issue I have with the Marvel stuff now. Is like I'm going to watch Captain America. And who the hell? Now this is a different guy. What's happening? There's the thing I'm familiar with. I'm completely thrown off within the first 5 minutes of the movie. So like the reason that we like these things is immediately dismissed and undermined in some way.
Yeah. The Hulk is red now.
Yes. Come on.
The fuck. And he's not Mark Ruffalo.
Exactly.
Captain America's black? What the hell? So we've learned that franchise storytelling is actually like a byproduct of human nature to an extent. We just like doing it. But let's fast forward several thousands of years and figure out how franchise movies specifically became popular.
There's this popular perception that the only thing that people in Hollywood care about is making money. And this is close, but it is wrong. Because the main thing that people care about in Hollywood is not losing money. And those are two different incentive structures, right? making money, you can have a very, very high upside. But if you fail and you lose money, then you're out of a job. People lose their job all the time for that reason, right? If you lost money on a movie. If you make a 20% return on a movie, maybe it's not, huge, it's not cataclysmic, you're not, getting a star on the Walk of Fame, but you keep your job. And so the incentive structure, particularly as these companies are now publicly traded, right? All the studios are publicly traded corporations, is they would much rather have reliable returns than they would have, very big hits and misses. And this is a shift, right? This is a shift from the way that studios had operated in the past. Particularly, if you look at the new Hollywood era, if you look at the era when the studios were backed by financiers who, they weren't publicly traded. They were just backed by rich guys who were like, this is a really great way to make money. They were willing to take more risks and they were willing to do more interesting things just because it was an emergent medium and just because they were accountable, frankly, only to themselves. And as a result, you were able to make these wagers. And yes, they were still basing things on pre-existing IP. They would option books all the time and make them into movies. But if you look at the starting point for a lot of franchises, you talk about the 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? And the reason for that in no small part was that they were not as accountable to shareholders as modern day studios are. And shareholders prefer reliable profits over, very volatile quarters. Now that the shareholder incentive is to get reliable returns, you have seen people become really, really entrenched in franchise-related filmmaking, whether that's reboots, sequels, or, just any kind of continuation of pre-existing IP.
So I, of course, knew that, the proliferation of franchise films was mostly due to money, is the best way for people to make money. But I never thought about it being a risk assessment. I never thought about actually it's more about not losing money than it is about making money. And that's why we're probably seeing fewer and fewer original novel ideas.
Yeah, just depressing. You look at the great movies of before, like the 70s, Walt's saying, where it's just some rich guy with a studio funding things, and some are going to be good and some are going to be bad, versus today where it's just we find one thing that works and just keep doing that over and over and over and over and over. It's very lowest common denominator to just grow and grow as much as you can, versus at least having some sort of shot at making something interesting and good,
right?
That also could make you a lot of money.
All right, it's time to get to the question at hand. Why are these movies actually on the decline? Are we just burnt out, or is there something else going on here? That's after the break.
Ooh, good tease.
Pretty nice, huh?
That was good stuff.
Keep them coming back.
I guess we gotta sit through these ads now.
Yeah.
All right, we're back. Before the break, we heard from Walt Hickey, author of You Are What You Watch. We learned that franchise storytelling is an ancient practice. We learned that studios are incentivized to do franchise films, essentially because they're more beholden to shareholders who are beholden to profits. And we learned that audiences love cinematic universes, essentially because they love a relationship with IP. If all of these things are true, why are franchise films on the decline? Walt identified 3 reasons for why this is. Reason number 1, franchises have exhausted the best of the source material.
The way that the studios very wisely perceived Marvel is that Marvel Comics was an R&D operation that went on for 60 years, that tested at a very, very cheap rate, all things considered, ideas and concepts and characters that, as a result of the market conditions over the course of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, were able to decisively determine what the best possible stories from the best possible characters were, right? Spider-Man has a notoriously deep bench, right? There's a reason that the Sam Raimi movies hit some of the characters and the villains that were the most iconic for Spider-Man, right? The X-Men movies, when they emerged on the scene, there's a reason that they did the stories that they did, right? Days of Future Past was so high on the docket because that's considered one of the best comic stories of all time, right? And so they're pulling from material that is tried, tested, and approved. They're working with heaters, right? They were pulling from the best. They were stealing from the best. What have the past couple years post-Endgame involved? They haven't been pulling from the comics in as much of a direct way. Part of that's just because some of these comics are weaker. Some of these characters didn't have the iconic runs that you think. If you look at like the Black Widow movie, the Eternals movie, the Multiverse of Madness movie, Wakanda Forever, Quantumania, Thunderbolts, even Marvels, there's no specific comic arc that these are based on. They are not pulling off of the red hot fire that was some of the best comics of the past 60 years. If you look at the counterpoint, though, like Deadpool and Wolverine was a very successful comic before they made it into a movie. Like, that was a proven rapport. And so at the end of the day, like, I think that there's this issue that they have where the well is running a bit dry on the stories that are very meaningful, and it's causing them problems.
So the idea that franchise films, especially Marvel, kind of ran out of source material makes a ton of sense to me, and it reminds me of something that happened in TV a few years back. When Game of Thrones, the TV show, caught up to where Game of Thrones, the books were. And the TV show had to keep going, but there was just an immediate, clear drop-off in quality. George R.R. Martin, the author of the Game of Thrones books, told the TV showrunners what was going to happen anyway. But without that already written dialogue, without the plot structuring that George R.R. Martin wrote in the previous books, the TV show just was clearly different. It didn't have the same weight. All of a sudden, characters are traveling distances in one scene that would have taken them an entire season in previous seasons. It just felt a lot sloppier. And even though the show looked better and better as the seasons went on, similar to these Marvel films, I think the difference in quality was so clear when there was no longer source material to work from.
Well, and I think part of it too, right? It's like there's a difference when you're focused on writing a story for the sake of like writing a good story versus like, oh, I need to write this story real quick so that we can make a movie.
And then I think a good contrast is like Avatar. Clearly, that's just like James Cameron's been thinking about that since he was like 10 or something. He has sketches of it, and it's like, all right, it's crazy. He's trying to do these 5 movies or whatever, but like those feel very connected and like still have a piece.
There's like a mission, you know? There's a lot more intention.
Exactly.
And it's actually a perfect segue because Walt's second reason why franchise movies are on the decline is a concept he's calling exploitation versus innovation.
Ooh.
Let's go.
The studios aren't actually good at new ideas. The 2 biggest properties that Disney owns are Star Wars and Marvel, and they were both bought, right? Like Marvel obviously was its own fascinating little operation that they bought in the early 2000s. Star Wars was its own, like a very successful independent film company. Like all the Star Wars prequels were independent films. He financed them based on the toy sales. It was an incredible maneuver, right? Disney hasn't really produced an in-house original franchise in a very long time. Like Pixar, again, was an acquisition, but like if you really think about it, you have to talk about like maybe Moana and Frozen were the most successful in-house Disney born and bred products. And even those, hypothetically, they poached Lin-Manuel Miranda. They poached Robert Lopez and to do all the Disney songs. And so like these institutions are not necessarily R&D departments. They're acquisition vehicles for R&D departments that can eventually be exploited through toys, parks, cruises, and so on. And so the fact that these things run out of gas should not be surprising, I guess is kind of what I'm saying. That the very nature of the corporate studio product is antithetical to necessarily innovating on any level that is not exploitation.
So a lot of this does seem to be kind of pointing back to like the pitfalls of capitalism, right? If it's true that like all these places need to make as much money as possible, then we're just going to be stuck in that for a long time, I think, unless the incentive structure for filmmaking changes.
No, that makes sense in terms of the, thinking about the studios not being able to innovate themselves. So they're just buying the innovators.
Yeah. I wouldn't even say that they can't innovate. I think there's no reason for them to innovate when they can just acquire someone who's already
both,
doing it.
Right? It's like it's easier to do this and safer and all that.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and just think like more broadly, like how many directors or producers can make something by themselves. Like you hear all the time about really famous, great, well-esteemed directors who like can't get projects off the ground. Like even, Scorsese or something. Like it seems like basically Christopher Nolan is maybe the only person who can do that. Or like, Paul Thomas Anderson kind of just because but like that feels more like the old model of just like, yeah, he just has like backers who will give him the money to do whatever, and it doesn't really matter how the movie does. Nolan actually will make the $1 billion, so he can do the crazy. It's funny because he's doing the Odyssey, so it's like, well, he's
doing a
franchise stuff.
Yeah,
It's like great. Like, can't come up with anything original, Chris. But like, he's probably like the only person I can really think of to do it. Meanwhile, David Fincher is in the trenches doing like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 2 for Netflix. It's ridiculous.
All right. The third and final reason why movie franchises are on the decline, according to Walt Hickey, is just trend cycles.
The trend cycle thing is like, even within superheroes, we've seen the trend cycle come back in reverse. You go back to like the first Batman in the 60s, right? That was a joke. Batman was a silly banana. He was, Adam West doing all that kind of stuff, fun stuff.
I am a little hungry.
Of course, Robin. Even crime fighters must eat. And especially you. You're a growing boy and you need your nutrition.
Then you get a more serious take from the Tim Burton movies. And then again, you have the Batman the Animated Series, which is, again, for children, right? I was one of these children and really enjoyed it. You have, this dark, gritty Batman, and then you have a more aspirational. It just comes and goes and comes and goes. And so we are on the point of the trend cycle where we are at the end of one and the beginning of the other. It is not shocking to me that the two big superhero releases this summer, Superman and Fantastic Four, are going back to a lot more of an earnest feeling. Right? They're going back to that more like glinty-eyed staring at the sun. We're done snarking. And like snark is the era that brought the MCU in. It has had significantly diminishing returns over the past couple of years. And I think that we just have to see how that pendulum swings, because it could very well work. The people who were 18 when Iron Man came out are in their mid-30s and have kids. And maybe they want to see a movie about a family now. And so this really could, like, part of this is just the organic trend cycle and how to be ruthless about it. So like, those are the things that are kind of fatiguing, I think, like the exhaustion of this trend cycle, the just nature of exploitation, and just the exhaustion of the material. But like, I think that there's potential and hope here,
Yeah, it makes sense. Trend cycles. It's like, all right, the reason why I stopped wearing a shirt is because I've gotten used to it. It's no longer providing a variety for me. And I can see that easily happening with like Marvel movies where it's like, all right, I get it. It's been 15 years of the kind of like, oh, that just happened lines.
He's right behind me, isn't he?
And so it's really easy to get tired of that. So we got the three reasons why Walt thinks movie franchises are on the decline. They all make sense. I did ask him, though, like what he thinks the future of franchise films will be.
Franchises have existed for thousands of years. They've become very popular and central to a particular business model now. That is absolutely true. You can say a lot of things about the film industry, but again, like, they are rational economic actors, and audiences are rational economic actors. The film industry is in its own way ruthless, right? Like, if a movie bombs, if a movie does bad, then they don't make more of that movie anymore. If a movie does well, they make more of the movie. And I think that they are not so beholden to the existing model that you can see this absence of innovation, right? Marvel tends to do this by bringing in new filmmakers, right? They tend to try to get new blood into the organization to see what works and then bring back the folks who were most effective. There's a reason that like Andor is like real hot right now, potentially going to win an Emmy, is the most vibrant thing in Star Wars yet, because they gave it to a filmmaker who has a very specific vision about what he thought ought to exist in Star Wars. And his answer was, we should make the Battle of Algiers in Star Wars. And it's a great answer. And like, it kind of goes back to like what Lucas was doing, because Lucas wasn't trying to, at least originally, he wasn't just trying to make more Star Wars movies. He was trying to do like, all right, I want to see if I make the Viet Cong fuzzy, will America root for them in the Return of the Jedi? Like, the answer was, hell yeah, man. Like, ultimately, any kind of genre filmmaking has to stay on its toes and stay innovative and be something new, because the one thing that audiences love more than seeing something that they already love is seeing something very novel.
Once again, Walt making a ton of sense there with the importance of these franchise films to, maintain a variety and a freshness as they move forward. That is interesting to think about, the kind of trend lately where the studios are handing the reins over to more auteur filmmakers. What do you guys think of that?
I think it depends if the studios actually want to let the auteurs do something interesting and new versus like, I just need somebody to put their name on this movie and here are the parameters and you got to work within that. I think that was the big issue with the Barry Jenkins Lion King remake. Right? Where it's like, we want Barry Jenkins to do this movie, but you have to do it in this particular way, and here's the script, and like, here's the parameters. And it's not very good.
No, or like the woman who directed Nomadland.
Yes.
It's like, you see it all the time where it's like, you win the Oscar for this great original work you do, and then you're doing this other thing.
What did she do next?
She did The Eternals.
Oh,
Chloe Zhao.
Oh yeah.
And then that movie did horribly, but it's like they get this flashy name to do it. Like, what do you even do if you're directing a movie like that? Like, you probably have barely any control.
And it does seem to come down to something we've heard in comic books for a very long time. With great power. I'm not even going to finish it. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
No
Thanks for listening to No Such Thing, produced by Manny, Noah, and Devin. This was the first episode of Season 2, which we are happy to announce is in collaboration with Kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope is a podcast production company. They have a ton of great shows, and we're so excited not just to be added to their roster, but also to be working with them to make even better episodes of No Such Thing. So with that said, this is a production of Kaleidoscope Content. Our executive producers are Mangesh, Hattikudur, and Kate Osborn. The intro theme and the new outro theme is produced by me, Manny. Thank you to our guest, Walt Hickey, author of You Are What You Watch. See you next time.
No such thing.